I didn't plan to talk about this, but it still follows me. It was supposed to be a quiet favor. A friend of my mom's knew an older couple who needed someone to keep an eye on their place for 2 weeks while they were out of state. Not security exactly, more like, don't let the pipes freeze, don't let the coyotes get into the trash, run the water now and then, make sure the porch light works. That kind of thing. The pay was decent, and I was in a stretch of my life where quiet sounded like medicine. I'd been sleeping badly, working too much, staring at my phone too late. A farmhouse in Texas, away from traffic and neighbors, felt like it might reset my head. The drive out was longer than I expected because out in the country means something different in Texas, when the road straightened until it felt like it had no intention of turning ever again. The sky had that big pale look it gets when the heat has been sitting there all day. Pasture land on both sides, tall grass bending like it was tired. Every now and then, a windmill or a water tank, and fences that went on as if they were fencing in the horizon itself. I kept thinking, if my car died out here, I'd be walking a long time before I saw anyone. The farmhouse came into view in the last bit of daylight, a low shape with a deep porch and a roof line that looked like it had been repaired more than once. The paint was sun-worn, a kind of white that had turned into something else. There were mesquite trees near the edge of the yard, and a few old pieces of equipment in the grass like they'd been left there and the land had decided to keep them. The porch had one light, a warm bulb under a metal shade. Even before it turned on, I could picture how it would look at night. A small island of amber in all that dark. The keys were in a lockbox, like they said. The couple had left a handwritten note on the kitchen table. I remember it because it was the most normal thing in the world. Directions for the thermostat, the breaker box, the well pump switch. A list of numbers. The neighbor's landline, a vet, a sheriff's office. They'd drawn a little square around one line. Porch light switch is sticky. Under that, one extra sentence like it was an afterthought. Please keep the bedroom lamp off at night. That line made me pause. I reread it, in fact, waiting for the rest of the explanation. There wasn't one. It wasn't a joke either. The handwriting was steady and practical, not playful. It sounded like a rule. The kind people make after something happens once, and they don't want it to happen again. I told myself it was about bugs. Lights at night out there pull in moths and gnats like you wouldn't believe. Maybe they had a thing about light leaking through the curtains. Maybe it spooked the livestock. I don't know why my brain grabbed that sentence so hard, but it did. I actually looked toward the bedroom hallway after I read it, as if the hallway could explain. Inside, the house felt like it had its own, temperature. Not cold, but cooler than the outside heat, the way old places can be when the air hasn't been moved around much. The floors creaked in specific spots, to you like they were pointing out where other people had walked for years. The hallway was dark wood, the kind that soaks up light instead of reflecting it. Even with the kitchen light on, the hallway stayed dim, like it refused to be fully included in the room. I unpacked my bag in the front bedroom because it was the one they'd said to use. Thin curtains, pale fabric, the kind that turned moonlight into a soft wash. The lamp on the nightstand had a shade that looked too new for everything else, like they'd replaced it recently. I touched the switch without turning it on, just to see if it was loose. It clicked solidly. I left it alone. The first evening was honestly nice. I made something simple, ate at the table, Listen to the quiet. I walked out onto the porch around dusk, just because I could. The porch boards were rough under my shoes. When I flipped the porch light on, it made a circle that didn't reach the edge of the steps. Beyond it, the yard was already turning into a black shape. Crickets and cicadas were loud, the way they get when the day's heat is finally letting go. Somewhere out in the field, a cow lowed once, slow and distant, like it was talking in its sleep. I stood there longer than I meant to, looking out at the tall grass. There's a kind of darkness you get out in the country, where it isn't just no light. It's light doesn't matter. It doesn't bounce back. It just stops. You can point your face toward it and feel small. The porch light was warm on my hands and arms. The rest of me felt like it was standing at the edge of something endless. That night, I went to bed early, because there wasn't anything else to do. I left the bedroom lamp off, like the note asked. The moonlight came through the thin curtains, cool and pale. It made the dresser look like a flat shape instead of an object. I could see the outline of my bag on the chair. The air conditioner cycled on and off with a low hum. I told myself I'd sleep better out here, and I did fall asleep fast. I woke up the first time because the house made a sound. It wasn't a bang or a crash. It was one of those subtle noises you don't hear in apartments, the kind you notice in old houses when the temperature shifts. A quiet, drawn-out creak, like wood settling under a slow change. I lay there, eyes open in the dim, listening.
Did you remember to take the
Nothing after
casserole out
that.
of the freezer, honey?
Just the cicadas
Time to
outside
thaw before supper.
and the soft hum of the AC. I remember checking my phone without really meaning to. 2:13 a.m. The light from my screen felt too bright, like it was rude. I turned it off and rolled onto my side. Then came a second sound. Softer. Not from the walls, not from the ceiling. From the hallway. It was the faintest thing, like a foot sliding rather than stepping. If you've ever heard someone in socks on wood, trying not to make noise, it was like that. I didn't sit up right away. I didn't call out. My first thought was embarrassingly normal. Maybe the couple came back early and didn't tell me, and now I'm in their bed like an idiot. I listened harder, and my stomach tightened a little, because there was no other sound that should have been there. No whisper, no keys, no door, just that hush shift. Then nothing. I held my breath without realizing it. When I finally exhaled, the sound seemed to answer. A second hush shift. It's closer to my door. I know how this sounds, and I know the story people expect at this point. But the truth is, I didn't move. I laid there like a kid, pretending to be asleep, because some part of me decided that if I pretended hard enough, whatever was out there would believe it. It's not a brave thing to admit, but it's honest. I waited for a knock. I waited for the door to open. I waited for a voice. Nothing happened. Eventually I fell asleep again, but it was lighter sleep. The kind where you surface every time the house breathes. In the morning, everything looked ridiculous. Sunlight made the hallway normal. The dark wood was just wood. The creaky spots were just creaky spots. I told myself I'd imagined the whole thing because I was tired and in a strange place. I made coffee, ate toast, went and walked outside to check the gate like they asked. I did small chores, the way you do when you're trying to prove to yourself you're fine. I kept thinking about that line in the note about the lamp, and I got annoyed with myself for letting it matter. The second night, I built a routine on purpose. I watched something light on my phone, brushed my teeth, checked the locks. I walked the porch before bed. The porch light made the same warm circle. The grass outside moved just a little, like the field was breathing. Somewhere far out, a dog barked once and then stopped. The silence after that felt heavy, like it had weight. I went back inside and stood at the end of the hallway for a second, staring into it. The kitchen light behind me didn't reach far. The hallway swallowed it. I could see the bedroom door, my door, like a pale rectangle. The rest was shadow. I remember thinking, I'm not afraid of a hallway. I'm an adult. I've lived alone. I've walked home late at night in cities. I've done plenty of normal life things that are actually risky. A hallway is not a threat. Still, when I stepped into it, I walked a little faster than I meant to. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. the second night. I didn't check my phone first. I knew the time because the air conditioner clicked off, and the house settled into a quiet that felt deliberate. The cicadas had quieted down too, as if the outside world had paused. And then from the hallway, the same soft movement. This time there were two sounds, spaced apart. A slide, then a slight creak, as if weight shifted. It didn't sound like a person walking normally. No, it sounded like someone trying to move without lifting their feet. Like they didn't want their steps to have edges. My mouth went dry. I stared at the thin curtains and the cool moonlight, and I tried to make my mind do math. How far was the bedroom door? How loud could I be if I needed to shout? What would I even shout? I thought about the sheriff's number on the note and felt stupid. What do you say? Hi, I'm house sitting and I think the hallway is, moving. The sound came again, closer, slide, shift, silence. I could hear my own heartbeat, which sounds like an exaggeration until it happens. It's not dramatic, it's just loud in your ears when everything else goes still. I pressed my palm against the mattress like that would keep me anchored. Then I heard something else. Not a step. A breath. Just one. And drawn in through somewhere that wasn't my room. A slow inhale, like whoever was in the hallway had gotten close enough to my door to smell the air coming through the crack. It was so quiet, I almost convinced myself it was the house or the AC. But it had the shape of a breath. It rose and fell. It ended. I stayed completely still. I didn't even swallow, because the sound of swallowing in a quiet room is louder than you think. After that, the hallway went silent again. No retreating steps, no door opening. Just nothing, as if it had never been there. In the morning, I walked the house like I was inspecting a rental. I checked the front door, the back door, all locked.
It's so
Windows
quiet now.
latched.
Much
I looked
better
for
this
signs
way.
that someone had come in. Nothing. No disturbed dust. No broken latch. No footprints. The floors creaked, but they creaked in the same spots as before. I even opened the closet in the hallway, expecting to find something obvious and stupid like a loose vent cover or a raccoon that had gotten inside. Just coats and old boxes, the smell of cedar. Around midday, I got a call from the couple's number. The voice on the other end was older, a man, friendly. He asked how things were going. The sound was clear and normal, like he was calling from a grocery store. I hesitated, then mentioned the hallway noises in the most casual way I could manage. He went quiet for half a second and then laughed, just a short breath of laughter. Old house? He said. It talks at night. Yeah, I said, relieved. That's what I figured. He paused again. You're keeping the bedroom lamp off, right? My stomach tightened. Yeah. Good, he said. Iron is like that was the end of the subject. And the porch light stays on at night. Sticky switch, but make sure it's on. I almost asked why, but something in his tone made me stop. He sounded like someone who had learned not to explain certain things because explanations turn into conversations, and conversations turn into arguments, and arguments turn into panic. He asked about the well pump. He asked about the gate. We ended the call like normal people. I stood in the kitchen after, phone in my hand, staring at the dark hallway, even though it was bright day. The hallway looked the same as it always had, but now it had a new layer to it, like a stain you can't unsee. That afternoon, I did more chores than necessary. I washed the sheets, even though I'd only used them 2 nights. I swept the porch. I wiped down counters that weren't dirty. And I kept myself busy, because being busy made me feel like I had control. At dusk, I stood on the porch again and watched the sky fade. The porch light, when it came on, made the boards glow a warm amber. The field beyond stayed dark, swallowing the horizon. I told myself I would stay up late and prove to myself nothing was happening. I made coffee after dinner, even though I shouldn't have. I sat at the table with the kitchen light on and listened. The house was quiet in a normal way. The hallway stayed dark. Every now and then the wind would brush the side of the house and make the porch screen sigh. At 1:30 I felt silly and tired. I went to bed with the lamp off. The moonlight through the curtains looked colder than before, like it had sharpened overnight. I lay there and waited. I woke at 2:17 again. Not because of a noise this time, but because my body just did it, like it had learned the pattern. The air conditioner was off. The house was holding its breath. The cicadas were quiet, and the hallway was not empty. I can't tell you how I knew. I didn't see anything. The door was closed, but there was a weight in the space beyond it. The way you can sense someone standing too close behind you without turning around. The air felt different, like it had thickened. I heard the slide shift sound again, and then a gentle pressure against the door. Not enough to move it, just enough to make the old wood complain with a tiny creak. It was like a hand had rested on the door and then lifted away. I stared at the ceiling in the cool moonlight, my eyes wide and dry. I thought about turning on my phone flashlight, shining it under the door, catching a shadow, and the thought made my chest squeeze. I didn't want proof. Proof would mean I'd have to do something. I tried to tell myself it was the house settling, but the timing was too precise. It came when I was awake, when everything else was quiet, like whatever it was knew when I was listening. Then there was a sound I hadn't heard before. A soft scrape along the hallway wall, like something brushed it. Not a fingernail, not a claw, more like fabric or skin. A slow drag. It moved past my door. I know it did because the sound traveled faintly, left to right, then faded. If it had been inside the walls, it would have sounded different, muffled. This was right outside, in the air of the hallway, close enough that I felt like I could imagine the texture of it. When it reached the end of the hallway, it stopped. And then from farther down, Bisha, there was a faint sound, like a door opening. Not a slam, not a squeal. A soft, careful shift of hinges. The sound of someone who knows exactly how to open a door without making it talk. I lay there with my hands clenched under the blanket, listening. I could barely hear my own breathing. The moonlight through the curtains was cold against my face. A few seconds later, a different sound. A low, shallow exhale. It didn't come from my room. It came from the hallway, but farther away, like whoever was there was standing at the open doorway, breathing into a room I couldn't see. It stayed like that for a long time, not moving, not leaving, just being. At some point, I realized my cheeks hurt because I was holding my face tense, as if I was bracing for something to happen. But nothing happened. No footsteps came closer. No door swung wide. And the house stayed in that suspended quiet. Eventually, the air conditioner clicked on with a jolt, and the spell broke. The hallway sounded empty again. The normal night noises returned. Cicadas warming back up. The soft hum of the system. I didn't sleep much after that. I drifted in and out and woke with my heart racing every time the house creaked. The next day, I was jittery in a way I couldn't hide from myself. I kept replaying the sounds, trying to find a rational explanation that didn't require me to believe I'd been lying in bed while something moved through the hallway. I told myself it was an animal in the house, an armadillo, a raccoon, something that had gotten in through a crawl space. But animals don't pause at doorways like they're listening. Animals don't press a hand against your door. I called the neighbor's landline because it was on the list and I wanted to hear a normal voice. A woman answered, older, sharp. I introduced myself, explained I was house sitting. She knew already, like news travels in rural places, even when people don't talk much. I asked as casually as I could if she'd ever had any issues with animals getting into the house. There was a pause. Then she said, "You keep the porch light on?" "Yes," I said. "And you don't turn on that bedroom lamp," she added. Not quite a question. "No," I said, my throat tight. Another pause, longer this time. "Then you're doing what you're supposed to," she said. "Just don't go walking around in the hallway at night. Don't go looking." "It wants you to go looking." Her voice was matter of fact, like she was talking about weather. I almost laughed because it sounded so ridiculous coming out of a real person's mouth. But she didn't laugh. She didn't soften it. "What is it?" I asked before I could stop myself. "I'm not the one to tell you that," she said, "and you don't need to know. You just need to be smart." "Smart how?" I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. "Porch light on," she repeated. "Stay in your room. In the morning it's nothing. At night it's something, that's all." She hung up after that, like the conversation was done. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at my phone, feeling like I'd stepped sideways into somebody else's rules. I didn't like the idea that the house had "supposed to" in it. Supposed to meant someone had negotiated with whatever lived there. Supposed to meant this was not new. That evening, I tried to pretend I wasn't rattled. I ate early. I kept the TV on low in the living room just to fill the air. Every time the hallway caught my eye, it looked like a mouth half open in shadow. I went out on the porch at dusk again, because the porch felt like the only place the dark couldn't sneak up on me. The tungsten bulb above me made my hands look warm, almost golden. Beyond the porch steps, the yard fell away into black. The tall grass moved in slow waves. The air smelled like dirt and something green, and the heat still clung even after sunset. I listened to the field. There were sounds, but none of them felt close. A distant insect chorus, a far-off call of some animal, the occasional rustle of something small in the grass near the porch. The porch light did what it did. It made a boundary. When I went inside, I checked the sticky switch twice to make sure the porch light stayed on. I checked it again before bed, even though I knew it was on, just to feel the click under my finger. I went to my room and left the lamp off. The curtains glowed with moonlight, cool and thin. I lay in bed and tried to do breathing exercises like I'd read about online. Inhale, hold, exhale. It didn't help. My body had already decided this was danger, and my brain was just riding along. I woke at 2:17 again. This time there was no slide shift, no creak, no breath. There was a voice. It wasn't loud, it wasn't clear. It came from the hallway like someone speaking from far away through a half-closed door. It didn't say my name in a movie way. It said something softer, more ordinary, a phrase you might use without thinking. "Hey," it said. Just that. A gentle, "Hey," like someone trying not to wake the house. I froze so hard my muscles ached. My eyes were open, staring at the ceiling's dim outline. The moonlight through the curtains felt suddenly too thin to be useful. I could feel the darkness in the corners of the room, deep and patient. "Hey," it said again, slightly closer. The voice sounded wrong. Not monster wrong. Wrong in a way that's hard to describe. Like it had learned how to shape a word but hadn't learned the human reason behind it. Like a recording being played through a speaker that isn't quite built for it. I wanted to respond without responding, if that makes sense. I wanted to make a sound that said I heard it, but I wouldn't engage. But my throat was locked up. All I could do was lie there and listen. A soft sound at the door. Not pressure this time. A faint tap, like it's like a knuckle against wood. Then not a knock, felt a test. Then very quietly, "You awake?" I could feel tears prick my eyes, not because I was crying, but because my body does weird things when it's scared. My skin was cold despite the heat. I listened for anything else in the house that might make it make sense. Any proof that a real person was out there. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear floor creaks. It was as if the voice existed without a body. The hallway stayed dark. The house stayed still. After a long time, the voice stopped. There was no goodbye, no retreat. It just ended, like a radio being switched off. I didn't sleep after that. I waited for morning in pieces, drifting and snapping awake at every change in the air conditioner. When the first light came through the thin curtains, turning the moonlight into gray, I sat up and felt like I'd been underwater. I did something that day that I hadn't planned to do. I started packing. I told myself I was being rational. I told myself that whatever this was, it wasn't worth the money. I could call the couple and explain I had an emergency. I could drive back. But I also felt guilty, because leaving felt like admitting I'd been scared off by a hallway and a voice. It felt childish, and a smaller, darker thought sat under that. What if leaving was what it wanted? I spent the morning moving around in the sun, doing busy tasks while I decided. The field looked harmless in daylight, a flat expanse of tall grass and fence lines. The porch looked like a porch. The hallway looked like wood. By afternoon, I was so tired that normal things felt unreal. I kept seeing the bedroom lamp in my mind. It's that too new shade. That note. Please keep the bedroom lamp off at night. I could have broken the rule easily. I could have turned it on and flooded my room with warm light. I kept imagining that, the safety of it. And then I'd remember the way both the man on the phone and the neighbor had asked about it like it mattered. Like light wasn't just light. That evening, I didn't even try to pretend I was fine. I ate, standing up. I kept my keys in my pocket. I didn't sit in the living room. I spent most of my time on the porch, under the tungsten bulb, because it felt like the only honest place. The porch light made the night feel close. Warm on the boards, warm on my hands. Beyond the edge, the dark was thick. The field swallowed everything. I stared at it until my eyes played tricks, turning grass into shapes, and then back again. At one point, I heard something in the field, a slow rustle like a large animal moving through tall grass. It wasn't fast. It didn't rush. It moved with patience. The sound made a wide arc, as if whatever it was had plenty of room and knew it. I stood very still, listening. The porch light didn't reach far enough to show me anything. It just made the boundary brighter, like it wanted me to understand where I belonged. The rustle stopped. The night went quiet again. I went inside and checked the porch light switch twice. I checked the locks. I walked to my bedroom with my shoulders tight, refusing to look down the hallway longer than necessary. I left the lamp off. The moonlight through the curtains was cool, and the room felt like it had been emptied of comfort. I lay down and stared at the ceiling, each is waiting for 2:17 like it was an appointment. When I woke, it wasn't exactly 2:17, it was 2:16. I know because I checked my phone and my hand was shaking as I did it. The house was quiet. The air conditioner was off. The cicadas were muted. Everything held still. Then, from the hallway, the slide shift began. It came closer than it ever had. The sound was distinct now, a soft dragging as if something moved without fully lifting itself from the floor. It passed the hallway's creaky spots without making them creak, which made my stomach drop. If it had weight like a person, the floor would have talked. But it didn't. It stopped directly outside my door. I felt the presence like a pressure change. My skin prickled. The moonlight through the curtains seemed suddenly insufficient, like I'd been depending on it and it had decided not to help anymore. A breath came through the crack under the door, slow and shallow, and I understood in a way I hadn't before that whatever it was could smell me or sense me. It wasn't guessing, it wasn't wandering, it was aware. I wanted to grab my phone and call someone, anyone, but the thought of speaking felt impossible. I couldn't make sound without giving myself away in some instinctive way. I know that sounds ridiculous because of course it already knew I was there, but fear doesn't care what's logical. Fear cares what keeps you alive, even if it's superstition. The breath came again, closer, like it leaned down. Then that gentle tap on the door. 1, 2, not a knock, a test. A voice softer than before, almost kind. Hey. The word floated in the hallway like it belonged there. It didn't bounce off anything, it didn't echo, and it felt absorbed by the dark wood. I stared at the door until my eyes hurt. My hands were clenched so tight my fingers ached. I could feel sweat on my palms. "You awake?" it asked, and this time it sounded closer, like it was right on the other side, mouth near the crack. I did something I still don't fully understand. I whispered, "No," without meaning to. It came out as barely air, more a thought than a word. But the sound existed. I'd made it real.
Much better than
The hallway went silent. For a moment, I thought that was good. That I'd answered in a way that ended it, like if you tell a telemarketer you're not interested and they hang up. I felt a thin wave of relief. Then the voice said, very quietly, "Then who said that?" My blood went cold. I couldn't breathe. The question wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was curious, almost amused, like it had caught me in a small lie. The air on the other side of the door shifted, and I heard that soft scrape along the wall again, closer, as if something leaned. The doorknob didn't turn, the door didn't rattle, it didn't force its way in. That would have been easier to understand. Instead, the voice stayed there and waited like it had all night. My eyes drifted against my will to the bedside lamp. It was right there. The switch was within reach. All I had to do was click it on and flood the room with warm light. I could make the dark retreat. But the note, the insistence, the way the neighbor said it wants you to go looking. I don't know how long I stared at that lamp. It could have been seconds. It felt like hours. My hand twitched once toward it and then stopped. In the hallway, the voice changed. Not to something monstrous, just to something flatter, like it was dropping the mask of friendliness. "Turn it on," it said softly. "Turn it on." The words weren't shouted, they were coaxed, like someone teaching you how to do something simple. "Turn it on," it repeated, and the cadence was wrong, like it didn't breathe between phrases. I sat up slowly, my back against the headboard because lying down felt too helpless. The moonlight through the curtains made the room look like a photo. Everything flattened into pale and shadow. The lamp sat there, a normal object with a normal switch, and yet it felt like a trap. The voice outside the door breathed, "Art," and I heard the faintest hint of something wet in that breath, like air passing through something not quite shaped for it. "Turn it on," it said again. I didn't. I don't have a heroic reason. I didn't make a stand. I was just terrified of the idea that turning on that lamp would change something I couldn't undo. It felt like an invitation, like once I lit the room, I'd be visible in a way that wasn't just physical. The voice stopped speaking. The silence that followed was worse, because it felt like it was thinking. Then the slide shift began again. Not retreating, but moving away down the hallway, slow and deliberate, like it had decided to go somewhere else in the house. I lay there shaking, listening to it travel farther, until it faded into the dark wood and distance. A door down the hall opened again, that careful hinge sound. Something exhaled into a room I couldn't see. The house stayed still. At 3:04, the air conditioner clicked on. The spell broke. The normal night returned in pieces. I lay there until daylight, eyes burning, body exhausted, too scared to even close my eyes all the way. When the sun finally came up, I didn't debate anymore. I packed my bag, grabbed the note off the table, and walked out onto the porch. The air was already warm, the kind of Texas morning that promises heat. The porch light was still on, making a useless warm circle in daylight. I flipped it off and felt guilty immediately, like I'd broken a rule that protected me. I drove to where I had cell service and called the couple. The man answered. I told him carefully that I couldn't stay anymore. I said there were noises, and I didn't feel safe. I expected him to argue or laugh or tell me I was imagining it. He didn't. He sighed like he'd been waiting for this call. "Did you turn on the bedroom lamp?" he asked. "No," I said, and my voice cracked a little. "Good," he said. He didn't ask details. He didn't want them. He told me he'd call someone else, that I could leave the keys in the lockbox. He thanked me for trying. Before he hung up, he said something that still makes my skin prickle when I remember it. "It wakes up when it knows you're alone," he said quietly, like he was confessing to the weather. "It likes a quiet house." I drove back in daylight, and the whole way the landscape looked too big and too open to hold something that belonged in darkness. That's the part that messed with my head the most. Nothing looked haunted, nothing looked wrong. It looked like normal Texas, wide sky, tall grass, fences, sun. The kind of place people live and raise animals and drink coffee on porches. For a couple weeks after, I tried to tell myself it was just stress. sleep deprivation, a weird old house, a neighbor who liked to spook people. I went back to my life. Work, traffic, screens, noise. I slept with a lamp on the first few nights and hated myself for it. Then I stopped, and things got normal again. Except sometimes, usually when I wake up in that thin, early morning hour, I hear something that reminds me of it. A soft slide in the hallway of my apartment building. A neighbor's door opening carefully. A voice from somewhere outside my bedroom that says, "Hey," like it's trying not to wake anyone. And every time, my eyes go straight to the bedside lamp. And I feel that same cold certainty that light is not always safety. That sometimes light is exactly what something wants.